What if everything you've been taught about hard work is a beautifully packaged lie? From the moment you're old enough to hold a pen or swing a tool, you're told to grind, to hustle, to sweat. That if you just work hard enough, long enough, you'll rise, you'll be rewarded, you'll be respected. But look around. The hardest workers are rarely the ones in power. They break their backs while others play chess with their futures. They sweat under the sun while someone in the shade signs the checks. The glorification of hard work is not a virtue, it is a control mechanism, because here is the truth you were never meant to hear. Working hard is not dangerous because it's ineffective, it's dangerous because it is obedient. Those who work the hardest are often those most easily used. They move in straight lines, predictable, visible, exhausted, and therefore harmless. You don't fear the man who's always tired. You don't watch the one who announces his grind. You ignore him because he's not playing the real game. Niccolò Machiavelli once warned that appearances often deceive and that those who seem virtuous are often the most cunning. But what if today's greatest deception is the cult of effort itself? In Renaissance Florence, the most powerful men were not the ones toiling on the streets. They were not the ones sweating over the forge or dying for their loyalty in the field. They were the ones who understood one timeless principle. Control is not earned by labor, it is acquired by leverage. A prince does not rule because he works harder than the peasant. He rules because he sees further, moves quieter, and thinks sharper. Strategy is not louder than labor, it is just less romantic. And so the poets never wrote about it. But the consequence is this: the masses worship the worker, while the elite engineer the conditions that make the worker necessary. Let me ask you something. Who benefits from a society that glorifies endless work? Who wins when you're too tired to think, too loyal to question, too invested in your own suffering to realize it was never your path to power? You were told to be proud of the grind, but pride is not power, and fatigue is not virtue. The man who never stops moving never notices he's walking in circles. Hard work becomes a treadmill dressed up as a staircase. It gives you the illusion of progress while keeping you exactly where you are, visible, compliant, and useful. And that's the danger, because the moment you confuse usefulness with power, you've already lost the game. A lion does not become king of the jungle by hunting every day. He becomes king because he chooses when to hunt, because his presence creates silence, because his restraint is more terrifying than another's aggression. The hard worker runs toward the problem. The strategist watches the battlefield and moves once, when the time is right, and wins with one strike. And yet, we hand out trophies for exhaustion. We worship burnout as if it were a badge of honor. We call sleep a weakness, rest a luxury, silence a flaw. But ask yourself, who planted that idea in your mind? Who gains when you never stop? When you always produce but never command? Hard work, unchecked, becomes a form of self-betrayal. It disguises itself as discipline, but often it is avoidance, a refusal to think deeper, to plan sharper, to demand more with less movement. There's a reason kings had advisors, not calluses. A reason the most feared men in history were not the loudest. They were the ones you never saw coming. They were the ones who moved once, not 1,000 times, who used others' movement as their advantage, who weaponized stillness like a blade. So when someone tells you to just work harder, understand that is not a strategy. That is a command designed for someone they do not see as a threat. Because the moment you become a threat, the moment you start thinking instead of just doing, is the moment they stop applauding your grind and start fearing your presence. There is a sickness among the ambitious, a hidden disease passed down like wisdom. It tells them that effort equals worth, that the man who suffers most is somehow more deserving, more noble, more real. But suffering, on its own, is not a credential. It is often the tax the unstrategic pay for their lack of clarity. And the world is filled with men who confuse being tired with being useful. They wear their exhaustion like armor. They believe that if they just outwork everyone, eventually the throne will be handed to them. But thrones are not awarded for effort. They are taken through insight, manipulation, and perfect timing. The man who works 10 times harder often serves the one who thinks 10 times sharper. Think of the gladiator. He sweats, he bleeds, he fights with everything he has. The crowd cheers. But who truly holds power in the arena? Not the man dying for applause, the emperor, the one watching, deciding, judging. With a single gesture, he determines life or death. He lifts his thumb and rewrites the future. Not through labor, but through leverage. Hard work without strategy is gladiator blood, dramatic, respected, but ultimately disposable. And yet society conditions you to believe that to be noble is to suffer, that your worth is measured by your willingness to endure thankless hours. that rest is weakness and silence is laziness. But hear this clearly, the most powerful men are not the busiest, they are the most deliberate. They don't run faster, they remove friction. They don't compete harder, they change the rules. A Machiavellian mind does not ask, how can I do more? It asks, how can I make less feel like more to everyone watching? This is the difference between the man climbing the ladder and the man who built the ladder and sold it to him. The worker seeks validation, the strategist engineers perception. The worker waits to be chosen. The strategist removes the illusion of choice entirely. So why are we told to worship effort? Why are we seduced by the image of the selfless man, the grinder, the one who never stops? Because he is safe. The man who grinds endlessly has no time to study the game. He is too busy to ask real questions, too tired to challenge the system that keeps him spinning. He becomes a cog. Honorable maybe, but still a cog. And cogs are replaceable. But you're here for something else. You are not meant to be seen as reliable. You are meant to be feared for your precision. You are not meant to serve. You are meant to watch, to observe, to strike once and never need to repeat yourself. This is not laziness, this is mastery. A sword drawn once with accuracy is more lethal than 1,000 swings in the dark. And yet schools don't teach this. Workplaces punish it. Parents fear it, because true power has no blueprint. It cannot be industrialized, it cannot be scaled, it cannot be tracked on a timesheet or benchmarked in quarterly performance. It lives in mystery, in the silence between your moves. The emperor's robe does not get dirty, and that is not an accident, it is a decision. You must choose to be admired for your grind or feared for your mind, but not both, because the man who chooses admiration will always serve the one who prefers control. The world does not remember the hardest worker in the room, it remembers the one who changed the room, and you cannot change what you are enslaved to. So step back, look around, ask yourself not how much you can endure, but what game you are actually playing, because while you're busy proving your effort, someone else is deciding your ceiling. There is a moment in every man's life where he realizes he is not tired because he is weak. He is tired because he has been aiming at the wrong target. It is not the weight of the work that breaks you. It is the betrayal of realizing the work was never meant to make you free. You were taught to climb the ladder, but no one told you it was leaning against the wrong wall. You were trained to move faster, but never to question where you were going. You were told that discipline meant endurance, but never that it could also mean restraint. True discipline is not about doing more, it's about knowing exactly when to stop. The strategist does not chase every opportunity. He selects a few, ignores the noise and sharpens his blade in the dark. He does not seek credit. He does not need validation. He moves quietly until the move matters. This is the power of strategic withholding, because the man who is always visible, always active, always loud, is easy to predict, and the predictable man is the most vulnerable creature in any room. You were taught to show your progress, but progress shown too soon becomes a map for your enemies. You were taught to announce your goals, but a declared intention is a target, and every target invites resistance. You were taught to be transparent, but transparency is not strength, it is exposure. It is an open invitation to sabotage. The man who wants power does not reveal everything. He reveals only enough to shape perception. Machiavelli wrote that the wise man does at once what the fool does at last. But let me add, the wise man often says nothing at all, and lets the world wonder what he knows. Mystery is not decoration, it is a weapon. You must learn the art of becoming unreadable, because the man who cannot be read cannot be manipulated. He holds the power of confusion. He creates doubt without speaking. He controls rooms without stepping forward. He draws others in, only to reveal nothing. And that silence, that refusal to explain, becomes more powerful than any speech. It is not charisma that makes kings, it is restraint. Watch how the room shifts when a man enters and says nothing. Watch how questions grow in the silence. Watch how power builds in the absence of performance. Hard workers speak to prove their worth. Strategists speak only when silence has done enough damage. And in this age of noise, of oversharing, overselling, over-explaining, the most terrifying force is a man who does not need to explain himself at all. He works, yes, but not for optics, not for applause. He works for position, and position is power, not because it's visible, but because it allows you to see everything while revealing nothing. In chess, the most dangerous piece is not the one that moves constantly, it's the one you forget about, the one that hasn't moved yet, the one waiting, still, quiet, coiled. So when you think about hard work, think also about consequence. Is your effort building influence, or simply feeding a system that needs your exhaustion to survive? Because in every empire there are workers, but only one architect. The workers build the palace. The architect owns the blueprint, and when the walls fall, it is not the tired man who is remembered, it is the one who planned it all. There is a reason the most dangerous men in history left very few words behind, and the words they did leave were calculated, sharpened, filed down to a blade, because those who seek power do not drown in noise, they rise in silence. The modern world has convinced you that you must prove yourself, that every day is an audition, that every effort must be recorded, time-stamped and posted, but kings do not audition, generals do not beg to be seen. Power, when real, does not explain itself, and yet the worker is told that visibility is the path to promotion, that if he keeps showing up, louder, earlier, harder, eventually he will be rewarded. But understand this, when you are always available, you are always replaceable. When you are always talking, they learn how to predict you, and once they can predict you, they can control you. Machiavelli knew the value of opacity. He understood that the most effective leader was the one whose intentions remained hidden, not because he had none, but because he refused to display them prematurely. A leader who speaks too much gives his enemies something to aim at, but a silent man becomes a mirror, and no one dares strike a reflection. Let that sink in. The most powerful man is often the least understood, and that is your edge. You must stop trying to convince others of your potential. Stop narrating your journey. Stop explaining your every move. Your enemies do not need a tour. Let them stay confused. Let them make false assumptions. Let them underestimate you, because underestimation is the camouflage of the truly dangerous. The world respects mystery far more than it respects effort. And mystery is not a talent, it is a choice. When you reveal everything, you give the game away. When you say too much, you become noise. And when you become noise, you lose gravity. A lion does not roar to prove he is a lion. He roars once, and the forest remembers for years. The rest of the time he is silent, still, watching. Can you do the same? Can you go a week without posting? A month without announcing? Can you train in silence? Build in silence? Grow in silence? And then arrive, complete, undeniable, untouchable? Or are you addicted to being seen? Because addiction to visibility is modern slavery. It keeps you dependent on feedback, on approval, on likes, comments, applause. It traps you in a loop of external validation, and a man in that loop can be led. You cannot be free while you need to be noticed. You cannot dominate while you still beg for credit. And you will never build an empire if your identity is tied to the grind that pleases others. The game is not about proving your worth. The game is about becoming unavoidable. And that has nothing to do with how hard you work, and everything to do with how rare your presence becomes. There is no scarcity in hard work. Millions do it. Billions live in it. But how many can remain unseen until they strike? Very few. Be one of them. Because in the end it is not the man with the calloused hands who controls the fate of kingdoms. It is the man who knows when to disappear and when to return with thunder. There comes a moment when the man who has labored for applause finally realizes the applause means nothing. It doesn't pay him. It doesn't protect him. And it certainly doesn't promote him. It is a leash wrapped in the sound of hands clapping. Because the moment your actions become dependent on external praise, you are no longer acting, you are performing. And performers don't win wars, they entertain the ones who do. Hard work has been weaponized against you. It has been romanticized, glorified, sold to you as noble. But nobility without power is a story told at your funeral, not a victory shouted in your lifetime. You are not here to be remembered fondly by those who used you. You are here to win. And to win you must begin to value something far rarer than effort. Control. Control of time. Control of perception. Control of narrative. Control of outcome. These things do not come to the hardest worker. They come to the sharpest manipulator of movement. The man who steps once, with perfect aim, while others run in place. He understands this. Effort is visible, but leverage is invisible. The ones in control are not the ones sweating. They are the ones who profit from your sweat. The ones who can move resources, shift attention, bend perception without breaking a sweat. You are taught to respect the man who never stops, but Machiavelli would teach you to respect the man who waits, who chooses when to be seen, how to be heard, where to leave no trace. This is the essence of power, not chaos, not noise, not endless motion, but measured, intentional force. Let's look at the battlefield. The general does not fight. He does not swing the sword or carry the weight. He directs. He sees the terrain. He understands timing. He knows that force must be precise or it is wasted. One wrong move, one early attack, and the army collapses. The soldier may be brave, strong, and tireless, but the war is won by the man who reads the silence before the storm, not the one who charges into it blindly. And that's where most men fail. They think if they just keep working harder, someone will notice, someone will reward them, someone will hand them the crown. But crowns are not handed out, they are taken by men who understand the hidden layers of power, men who don't wait to be chosen, because they've already rigged the game. Ask yourself, why is it that the wealthiest, most powerful men in history are often obsessed with stillness? Why do they wake up before everyone else, disappear into hours of silence, avoid noise, cut people off? Because they understand the value of uncluttered attention, because while others chase dopamine and distractions, they are building something the world will obey, not just admire. You were told that to rest is to fall behind, but that is the belief of the pawn. The king does not rush, the king does not multitask, the king does not panic. The king waits until every piece has moved and then makes one move that ends the game. Your obsession with being busy is costing you your edge. Your need to always be seen is blinding you to your position, and your addiction to motion is the very reason you are stuck. The next level of power does not require more effort. It requires less noise, fewer moves, stronger moves, and silence, the kind that makes others speak just to fill the void you leave. That's when you know you've entered a different arena, where hard work ends and true power begins. So now you understand. Working hard isn't wrong, it's just not enough. It's the first stage, the proving ground. But staying there, that's the trap, because the world doesn't reward effort, it rewards effect. It does not crown the man who tries the most. It crowns the man who alters the landscape with the least motion possible. The crowd chants for the fighter who bleeds, but the kingdom belongs to the one who never had to fight at all. And if that makes you uncomfortable, good. That discomfort is the signal, the fracture in the illusion, the last gasp of a lie dying inside you. Because deep down, a part of you already knew. You knew something was wrong with the endless grind, with the applause that felt hollow, with the exhaustion that never brought you peace. You knew, but you didn't have the language for it. Now you do. Hard work without direction is servitude. Hard work without detachment is addiction. Hard work without leverage is enslavement, dressed up as virtue. And the man who wants to rise must do more than labor. He must learn to disappear from the pattern that controls others, to step back, to observe, to move once, cleanly, like the hand of God across a chessboard. Because once you taste what it feels like to win without being seen, you never go back to begging for recognition. You are no longer interested in being admired. You are interested in being remembered. And that difference, that quiet, dangerous difference, is what separates the empire builder from the bricklayer. So choose now. Will you keep chasing the pride of labor, or will you step into the ruthless stillness of the strategist? Will you keep exhausting yourself for temporary praise, or will you become unreachable, unraidable, and ultimately untouchable? Because the man who cannot be touched cannot be controlled, and the man who cannot be controlled becomes legend. If you've made it this far, it's because you're done pretending, you're done performing, you're ready to vanish from the crowd and become the storm they never saw coming. Now tell me in the comments, are you ready to let go of the grind? Are you ready to let go of applause? If this message struck something in you, if it clarified what you've always felt, write it. Say it plainly, I choose leverage over labor. Let's see who here is ready to rise without permission. And don't stop now. The next video is where we sharpen the next weapon. Watch it. Trust me, it's more important than you realize.